Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 11th of July, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information, and you can do that easily anytime by calling us at 1-800-472-0391. As always, we're online as well, weather.gov/Alaska, and if you can't find what you're looking for, please feel free to email me anytime. I'm happy to serve you any way I possibly can. david.snyder@noaa.gov is how you find me. Let's take a look at the Air Quality Index monitor brought to you by the State of Alaska's Department of Environmental Conservation. And as usual, when you start getting into the red and purple colors, that's not good. This is some of the places that we're watching, of course, around the Middle Tanana Valley and Fairbanks especially. The range goes from unhealthy to hazardous very, very quickly. Those are levels anywhere above 300 to up to 500. And we're really talking about the PM 2.5. That is the smoke particulate matter there, 2.5 micrometers in diameter. And we're looking at places like A Street, Hurst Road, and Encore. All of these in North Pole and Fairbanks especially. And you know where the trouble spots are. Of course, the higher up you get, should be a little bit better, but it's a trapping inversion that's very similar to what happens in the wintertime. And the wildfire smoke there is still hovering over you. Now, it does look like as we go forward into the next several days, there is some opportunity, not a surefire bet, but some opportunity that we'll get some instability in there and we'll mix the air up a little bit more. However, as we've been looking at this the last couple of days, it looked like that opportunity might start today, and it hasn't been. So that's not good news. So the best thing we can say is, you know, if you don't have an opportunity to get to somewhere that has some fresh air, you can certainly get a mask and find one that does filter that PM 2.5 particulate matter. A simple dust mask will not work. If you have a beard, chances are that's not going to get a good seal over your face, and then wearing the mask really doesn't do you a whole lot of good. So consider some of those options there. In the meantime, if you want to monitor the air quality, whether that helps you make better decisions about where things are going right now or what you need to be doing, I think the easiest way to do that is by Googling Alaska and AKwx for Air Quality Index, and that'll lead you to this page. It's the second link down in your search results there. You can find it from the decalaska.gov page there, but it's a little bit buried in, and the address is kind of complicated to share. So I just Google Alaska AQI, and you'll find something similar to this on the second link down. Let's take a look at hazardous weather. Everything in red is a red flag warning, and that goes from areas from Lake Iliamna out west and then north all the way along the Alaska Range and west into the Koyukuk Valley, into the upper Yukon Valley, across the Tanana Valley, down toward the Alaska Range, Tanana Flats area, and the Copper River Valley. All of that is susceptible to lightning strikes in the next couple days, certainly through about midnight tonight for some areas in south central. And then we expect to see some improvements in this as we go through tomorrow. The Western Kenai Peninsula looking at a dense smoke advisory, and there are many other places, including the Tanana Valley, of course, under that dense smoke advisory, and that will continue at least tonight and into tomorrow for you. So again, not expecting any major improvement for all of these areas as we go into the future. The other thing we need to keep watch on, several glacier dam lakes, one of those Suicide Basin, of course, around the Mendenhall and the Juneau area, that has been more or less leaking water out over the top. And right now it doesn't look like it's going to release, but we don't know. We don't know, is that going to suddenly surge forth and roll down the river with a higher than usual surge of water? Or is it just going to kind of ooze and sneak its way out over the top and everything's going to be okay? We're keeping watch on the Suicide Basin, as you are. And if you go to weather.gov/Juneau, you can see the information that we're all looking at right there with you. So make sure you check that out if you want. This is the Kenai River update at Kenai Keys. One example here, we're still sitting in minor flood stage there. Levels earlier today in the last couple days have been running around 11.2, 11.3 feet. It does look like we are going to trend down back into kind of an action stage here, just below what we would call minor flood stage. There are some areas that have some water that usually don't. But if you're tracking the water, of course, for so many reasons, whether you're just living there or you're looking at fish or you're looking at fish and you live there, it looks like things are forecast to gradually go down. And this is true, too, at Copper River Landing. So keep that, or at Cooper Landing, I should say. Keep your eyes on that, but it does look like trends are going in a positive direction. And also watching a glacial dam release around Hyder in the Salmon River. So a lot of things going on there as far as rivers go. A lot of that really due to the unusual heat we've had. But the heat seems to be backing off. The trouble spot is we're still dealing with very elevated, if not high and extreme fire danger, pretty much all across interior Alaska. Northern parts of southeast in high fire danger. The Copper River Valley at least in high fire danger, but red flag warnings again on top of this. So we have the high and extreme levels of fire danger, but you compound that with the thunderstorm activity, and that puts us into those red flag warnings we were just talking about. So don't be confused by me showing you that some areas here don't have fire danger. They do, but when you compound that again with the dry conditions and thunderstorm activity, that worsens that. But as far as the fuels go, things across the upper Koyukuk, the middle and upper Yukon are at extreme levels. There has been some improvement across southwest and across south central, and a lot of that due to the marine flow that's been coming in up the Cook Inlet. Look at this. You can see a lot of cloud cover here right across Cook Inlet and across the western Kenai Peninsula with that south and westerly wind pushing that marine air northward. Made a huge difference and dropped those temperatures significantly. Across southeast, quite a bit of cloud cover today. You can see this hazy, murky color out across the Yukon Valley, in the middle Yukon Valley, all the way up into the upper Yukon. All of that is smoke, of course. You know that well. You're under it. You can also see a weak area of low pressure sitting here around Nome, sloshing in a west and southwesterly flow all the way up into the middle Tanana Valley and up north. And you can see areas of light northerly flow coming into the Arctic coast. This with that northwesterly flow coming in. There's a boundary right about here, and that's allowing that cool and damp air to sink southward. And that's moving the overall weather pattern around, too. The overall trough of low pressure that we've been dealing with now for weeks out to our west, and the ridge over Alaska, all that is moving gradually eastward, and the ridge is breaking down. So there is some good news there as far as the continuation of extreme heat goes. It does look like that has substantially backed off. So the next trick is, when does that next round of heat come in? And right now, it looks like it could be about another week, week and a half before it tries to build back in. So we do have some time where we could be under a cooler, cloudier regime for a large part of Alaska, especially interior and south central and even to some extent southeast. Low pressure right now is sitting across the northern parts of the Alaska Range and into the interior. North of that, we have high pressure across the Arctic coast to 1,013 millibars. That's giving us that north flow coming in, bringing in some low clouds, and at times some fog across the Arctic coast, no question about it. High pressure across the Bering Strait, 1,013 millibars, areas of fog sitting there. And out west, we have a trough of low pressure sitting across the central and western chain, 997 millibars, areas of some light rain out there across the central Aleutians, Adak and Atka, picking up some reports of some light precipitation. Other than that, areas of smoke across the interior and out across the west. And we have had some isolated but somewhat vigorous areas of thunderstorm activity. They've been pretty small there, and my areas of green on the map make them look like they're pretty extensive, and they are not. But those have been traveling generally east across the interior, and some of these out across the west are generally south and southeast as they move under the effects of high pressure, which does not have a very good steering current or a way to push those storms in any one direction. So they're pretty slow movers today. And across the region tonight, we're going to watch for more showers there and continued areas of smoke. If it is smoky where you are right now, chances are it's going to be smoky again tonight. High pressure across the western Gulf at 1,019 millibars. Some pockets of showers there moving through southeast. And again, a south and southeasterly flow with areas of fog, drizzle moving its way through the central and eastern parts of the chain and the Alaska Peninsula. As we get into tomorrow for Friday, low pressure is going to sit up here across the western sections of the Brooks Range. We're going to watch for some more convection, especially across the southwest. But overall, that trend should be decreasing as we get toward the weekend. We're also going to watch for shower and thunderstorm activity again across the interior, across the Alaska Range, and across the Copper River Valley. And that is once again prompting that threat for lightning starts in high fire danger areas. So that's where the red flag warnings come from. We're still going to have areas of smoke in those same old places. Might see some of that move its way into parts of Prince William Sound. If you haven't seen that yet, I think you have, but Valdez, Cordova, you should be watching for some of that. And probably going to have that hazy, smoky sky over southeast again with high pressure parking a lot of that very stable atmosphere right over you there. So you'll see that mixed in with the clouds, no question about it. Out across the west, low pressure still sitting across the chain, 1,002 to about 1,003 millibars, a few showers there. And that boundary is going to lift northward as we head into Saturday, watching for areas of fog and probably some light rain and drizzle. High pressure is going to sit across the Yukon Delta, across the Gulf of Anadyr, and spotty areas of shower and thunderstorm activity across the interior. Watching for areas of smoke again to shift just a little bit. But we expect that as this boundary moves a little bit, you can see the ridge kind of angled right here out across into eastern Russia all the way down to the Gulf of Alaska. As this starts to move north and east, we're going to change up the atmosphere out across the west. And when that happens, we'll probably mix up that smoke a little bit to where it starts to improve conditions. Now, if we could swing that a little bit further east, major improvement for Fairbanks. That's long in coming. We're not going to flush this whole system out in a couple days. It's going to take quite a while to sweep all of that out. So we need a really good, strong southerly wind coming in, or something coming in from the west to just totally change out the atmosphere, and we don't see that yet as we get into your Saturday. For southeast, some showers in the north sneaking their way into Skagway and Haines perhaps, and across places like Hyder. More clouds than anything else, it looks like, across parts of southeast. Let's take a look at your temperatures. 50s in southeast tonight. Lower parts of south central and the lower to mid 50s. Much warmer across the interior. Upper 50s and lower 60s there, and 30s and 40s up north. For your Friday afternoon, looks like 60s and 70s for the interior. One of the warmer spots, probably Galena up toward Ambler. 50s and 60s for the upper end of Kotzebue Sound. Out across coastal areas out toward the west, 50s and 60s. Substantially cooler closer to the water, of course. 55 near St. Paul, mid-60s for parts of southeast. Kodiak about 63. As we get into Saturday morning, 50s and 60s there for the interior, 40s up north, south central, upper 40s to mid-50s, southeast, mid-50s for you, and high temperatures on Saturday, still warm in the interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to your aviation weather now. IFR conditions will be around. We're still dealing with widespread smoke across the interior, of course, the worst of which seems to be around the middle Tanana Valley, as it's been for days. On top of that, of course, IFR concerns will linger across southeast, across the Copper River Valley, Prince William Sound, the Alaska Peninsula, and all the way through the Bering Strait and across the northern Arctic coast, with MVFR generally west from Utqiagvik all the way down toward Point Hope and Point Lay. As we get into the afternoon, we should see some improvements there with IFR lifting to the north and east. Across the central and eastern parts of the interior, a shower or thunderstorm may develop in the afternoon. We had a couple strong ones around the interior again yesterday. No reason that can't happen again for tomorrow afternoon. Smoke is still going to be around. We may see some reduction out in the west as the weather pattern is slowly shifting a little bit more into a trough or an area of low pressure that is going to add up a little more instability in some areas, which could lead to more mixing, which could lead to a greatly improved situation for you if smoke is in your area. Shower and thunderstorm activity will be a feature of the afternoon tomorrow, and we should gradually see that reduced in the west first. Before that changes a little bit more across the interior and south central. Watch for marginal conditions in southeast, IFR conditions across the southern Bering Sea as we go. For Saturday morning, not a big shift from Friday night into Saturday itself. We'll watch for IFR to be fairly thick across the interior, especially the upper Tanana Valley, south central Prince William Sound down toward Kodiak and across the chain. Look for IFR conditions there. IFR across southeast with marginal weather across the central and eastern Gulf. And then IFR up across the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast. You'll see that thicken up a little bit more as we get into your Saturday afternoon and start to move back into the Chukchi coast through the Bering Strait. Watch for a little bit of marginal weather around St. Lawrence Island. IFR conditions here across the central and eastern Bering, most of the chain, most of the Alaska Peninsula, and into the western Gulf on the south side of Kodiak Island. Marginal conditions there across central and eastern sections of the Gulf, including southeast, with the northern areas looking at IFR. And IFR conditions also expected across most of the upper Kuskokwim, all the way through the upper Yukon and the upper Tanana Valley. Let's get into your pass conditions now. Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass, we expect to see marginal conditions leading to IFR by the afternoon. And it looks like a lot of that, again, will be mainly due to the weather changes that we're seeing in the region. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass looking for marginal conditions, shower and thunderstorm activity may develop in the afternoon there, mainly over higher terrain, and as usual, anything that does develop is going to be very slow to move and improve. Watch for marginal weather there into Windy Pass with IFR conditions developing in the afternoon. IFR to start for Isabel Pass, a lean over toward marginal weather as we go through the day. Mentasta Pass, we expect to see marginal conditions there. IFR by the afternoon. IFR in the morning for Tenita Pass with some improvements during the afternoon for you. Portage Pass, we expect to see IFR conditions there. And to start in Chilkoot and White Pass with some improvement as the afternoon goes on. Morning freezing levels indicate that that cool pool of air is still sitting up across the northwestern territories of Canada. You can see the levels there around 10,000 feet into the upper Yukon and across southwest into areas around southern Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island, and about 6,000 to 8,000 feet across a good chunk of the Bering there, 10,000 feet across the central parts of southeast. Icing potential generally above 10,000 feet. Everything's still fairly warm as far as the moisture levels go. We do have a cool pool of air that's trying to work in from the west, so this may be lowering over time, but in general, most of the mainland is not looking at any significant icing concerns where you are. The main threats, as always, in the realm of thunderstorm coverage goes, if we have a thunderstorm in the area, there is always a risk for isolated severe icing in the vicinity of that thunderstorm. The jet stream shows low pressure across southwest and out across the western parts of the Aleutians with a strong westerly flow coming in south of the chain, and you can see that still digging in across a good chunk of the southern Gulf and into the Pacific Northwest, where a decent southwesterly flow is shifting there. That ridge of high pressure is still here, but it is gradually creeping eastward ever so slightly, and this ridge, or the trough pair that we see out west, is slowly creeping east. The trick will be following this, what happens? Do we get into another ridge and more heat? At 9,000 feet, a south and southeasterly flow across southwestern Alaska is picking up, 15 to 30 knots there. Light northwesterlies across the eastern interior and low pressure sitting across the Pacific Northwest. Winds are fairly light for the interior right now. Still looking at a west and southwesterly wind, 10 to 15 knots. High pressure across the Beaufort and south and southeasterly winds, 10 to 15 knots there. Southerlies across the Kodiak Island region and Bristol Bay. As far as turbulence goes, our main issue will be across the eastern Aleutians and across the southern tip of the Alaska Peninsula, generally below 5,000 feet. And we'll watch for a few shower and thunderstorm activity.
Measuring the cosmos. Hey there, stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. We're here to help you find your way around the sky tonight. Hey Dean, humor me. If you want to describe your height, what unit of measure would you use?
Feet and inches.
Okay, and if we wanted to measure the distance to the moon, what would we use?
I could use feet and inches, but miles makes a lot more sense.
Okay, how about the distance to stars?
We use light years. Distances in space are so astronomical that it's hard to wrap our brains around them. So we've created new units of measure to take us around the solar system and through interstellar space.
So let's take you to the moon, Jupiter, Saturn, and beyond. Okay. We have our sky set up for the night of Thursday, July 11th at 10:30 p.m. facing south. The moon is in its waxing gibbous phase, meaning it will soon be a full moon.
Every day the moon will shift farther to the east. Here's the moon on July 12th and July 13th. Let's fly up there and take our tape measures with us. On average, the moon is about 239,000 miles from the Earth. We can find out the precise distance to the moon anytime by bouncing lasers off the reflectors set up by the Apollo astronauts.
Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and company took 3 days to fly the 239,000 miles to the moon and 3 days to fly back.
Back on Earth, what's that bright light next to the moon on July 13th?
That is the giant planet Jupiter, and it's relatively close to us right now.
Relatively close. It may look like it's close to the moon, but it is much, much farther. While the moon is about 239,000 miles away, Jupiter is a whopping 409 million miles away.
As the night goes on and we get closer to 11:30 p.m., everything has shifted to the right, and another planet is getting higher in the sky. This is Saturn.
Saturn is just the most amazing sight to see in a telescope. You can see the planet the rings, the shadow of the rings, the moons.
Calm down, Dean. I know Saturn's your favorite planet, but let's do some measuring here. This week, Saturn is about 837 million miles away. Now that number is hard to wrap our brains around, so when we're talking about distances in the solar system, astronomers use a different unit of measure, the astronomical unit, or AU. 1 AU is the average distance between the Sun and Earth. So we're about 1 AU from the Sun. In miles, it's about 93 million miles.
Since Saturn is about 837 million miles away, it's also about 9 AUs from us. AUs work great within the solar system. For example, we could say Jupiter is about 5 AUs from the Sun, Neptune is about 30 AUs from the Sun, and Voyager 1, our farthest flung spacecraft, is a whopping 120 AUs from the Sun.
Now, what about that other star, the red one to the right of Jupiter?
That's the star Antares in the constellation Scorpius the Scorpion. Red giant stars like Antares are humongous and unbelievably far away.
Let's close in on Antares and measure its size and distance.
Antares is about 3.6 quadrillion miles from Earth, or 39 million AUs. We can measure the distance to Antares in millimeters if we wanted to, but those numbers lose all meaning for us.
Astronomers use light years as their unit of choice for measuring interstellar space. A light year is the distance light travels in a year, roughly 5.8 trillion miles. Therefore, Antares is a whopping 620 light years from Earth.
It's by no means the farthest star you can see with the naked eye. That honor most likely goes to Dehne, the tail star of Cygnus the Swan.
Deneb is over 3,000 light years away. That means the light you see left Deneb around 1000 BC.
So, see the moon at 239,000 miles away.
Saturn from 9 AUs away.
And Antares at 620 light years away.
Keep looking up.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And on to your marine weather now. The larger and higher concentration areas of sea ice generally well offshore. You can see a little bit still stuck on some of the shoals here north of Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse, but generally speaking, a lot of the blue shaded area you see here that's marginal ice is very low concentration marginal ice. So a lot of open water possibilities in here as of today's analysis from the Alaska Sea Ice Program. You can always check the very latest anytime, as well as sea surface temperatures by heading to weather.gov/Anchorage/ice. As we look at southeast, light winds coming up the inside passage there, about 10 to 15 knots. You're looking at about 2 to 3 foot seas. Looking about 5 to 10 foot seas across the outer coast, 4 to 5 foot seas in all areas, even lighter winds as you head up toward Prince William Sound there. Small seas expected for Saturday. A little bit of an onshore push, but not much. 5 to 10 knots in all areas. About 4 to 5 foot seas and 2 to 4 foot seas across the inside passage there. Looking about 10 to 20 knots coming in from the south on Saturday. For Friday in Prince William Sound, again, light winds, northwesterlies, 2 foot seas there, southwesterlies coming in across the outer coast outside of Hitchinbrook entrance. You're looking at northwesterlies coming out of the Seward area in the Resurrection Bay, and southerlies a little bit stronger across Cook Inlet, and that's going to keep that marine layer in place for a while, 10 to 20 knots. Anywhere from 3 to 6 foot seas, generally south of Kenai. For Saturday, winds slow down a little bit across the northern half of Cook Inlet. Still looking at an easterly flow. It's picking up a little bit more now across the Barrens, anywhere from 15 to 20. 3 to 4 foot seas across the Barrens, and you're looking at westerlies around Prince William Sound, Seward Peninsula, and outside of Hitchinbrook entrance there, generally 10 knots, 2 to 3 foot seas. For Friday in Bristol Bay, southerlies 10 knots, 1 foot seas, a south and easterly flow across the Alaska Peninsula. 3 to 6 foot seas there, 20 to 25 knots in general. And southwesterlies coming up on either side of Kodiak Island, 15 knots, and 4 to 5 foot seas, the strongest of which inside of Shelikof Strait. That should come down as we get into your Saturday. Easterlies around 2 foot seas, and southeasterlies across Kodiak Island, and easterlies down the Alaska Peninsula on the Pacific side, 15 knots, 6 to 7 foot seas expected there, and easterlies coming down the Alaska Peninsula coastline, 3 foot seas expected there with a 15 knot wind off the east. Now for the chain, A south and easterly flows expected. 6-foot seas there across the west, and westerlies for the central chain, anywhere from 5 to 7-foot seas there. Easterlies wrapping into low pressure. Remember, there's a trough of low pressure sitting right about here, so that gets that east and northwesterly flow kind of rotating around in this area. 20 to 25 knots, anywhere from 6 to 8-foot seas expected. As we get into Saturday, south and westerlies start to pick up. There's that trough lifts north and east. We get into a little bit of a return flow, a west and southwesterly flow coming in with that. But generally speaking, winds are really light across the Bering Sea right now, and seas are generally small. It's still holding around 6 to 7 feet there across some of the Pacific coastlines, but that's really about as good as it gets. For the west coast, west and southwesterlies are coming into Norton Sound, 3-foot seas there. South and easterly flow coming around Nunivak Island, anywhere from 2 to 3-foot seas, and easterlies around St. Paul and St. George. 15 knots there on Friday. That comes into more of a southerly flow as we get into your Saturday. South and easterly winds coming into St. Lawrence Island, 10 to 15 knots. Small seas south of Nunivak Island, the Kuskokwim Delta, and southerly winds around Norton Sound, 15 knots, and 3-foot seas there. Across the North Slope now, easterlies. These are some of the strongest winds really we have in the entire state. Right across the Beaufort Sea. Remember, high pressures up across the north. That's giving us that south and easterly flow coming in off the Beaufort, keeping things cool, keeping the decks low at times. That's going to make for areas of fog and mist as well. Otherwise, small seas though, and a little bit of an offshore flow, but becoming more of an onshore situation there for Kotzebue Sound. It's still looking at light winds and small seas there with 3-foot seas expected Friday. That becomes southerly coming up the Chukchi coast on Saturday, 10 to 20. And about 2 to 4-foot seas there, looking for an easterly wind coming across the Beaufort, still holding around 15 to 20 knots as you get into your Saturday afternoon, with 3 to 4-foot seas as we start up the weekend there. Let's recap your weather across the state now. Areas of smoke, really the greatest concern I have on the map tonight for areas around Fairbanks. That will remain at a hazardous level, it looks like, with very little chance, a lot of that mixing out with fresh, clean air that you so desperately need. Out across the west, areas of shower and even a few thunderstorms will be possible tonight and into tomorrow. Showers across southeast. We're still watching the Suicide Basin, and we're watching the Salmon River there around Hyder as well for glacial dam releases. Again, really no method to know if those are going to release or not, but they're being watched very carefully right now for any potential flooding down rivers. So you do the same. You can get more information about those two rivers at weather.gov/Juneau for the very latest information. As we get into Friday, shower and storm activity still possible around South Central and the interior, and as we go into your Saturday. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.